Eleanor stood quietly in the kitchen, sunlight filtering softly through the old lace curtains. Her hands, trembling slightly, held onto a porcelain teacup that had been a gift from Richard many anniversaries ago. The scent of fresh lilacs from the garden floated gently through the open window, bringing memories of happier times when Richard's laughter filled their home. Suddenly, the heavy sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway, breaking her from her reverie. Richard walked into the kitchen, a suitcase already packed in hand. Eleanor felt a tightening in her chest. She knew something was deeply wrong. This was not another business trip. Richard? Her voice quivered slightly. She searched his face for answers, finding only a cold, detached expression. "I'm leaving," he said flatly, avoiding her eyes. "I've met someone else, someone younger who understands me." A painful silence filled the room, punctuated only by the steady ticking of the antique clock. Eleanor's mind raced, yet she remained outwardly calm, dignity shielding her like armor. "You're leaving me after all these years? Just like that?" Richard finally looked up, a faint smirk appearing at the corner of his mouth, eyes glinting with a cruel amusement. "Yes, Eleanor. Did you think I'd stay forever with someone who's become as dull as this tired old house? Look at yourself. Who'd want you now? You'll never find anyone else." Eleanor felt the sting of his words pierce deeply, yet she refused to show her pain. Instead, she met his gaze steadily, her voice composed, defiant. "Good luck," she said, forcing a serene smile that she didn't feel. Richard hesitated briefly, clearly puzzled by her calm reaction, then shrugged dismissively and left without another word. The moment the door shut behind him, Eleanor's composure wavered, tears silently slid down her cheeks. The room spinning around her. Anger, betrayal, humiliation, all surged through her veins. But beneath it all, something new stirred within Eleanor, something powerful she had not felt in many years. Determination. She wiped away her tears, placed the teacup gently down, and picked up her phone, dialing the number she had kept hidden for weeks, suspecting this day might come. Her voice steady and resolute, she spoke clearly into the receiver. "Hello. I'd like to proceed with what we discussed. I'm ready now." Days after Richard's departure, Eleanor stood in front of her bedroom mirror, critically examining the woman staring back at her. The lines etched by time and worry felt pronounced now, marking every sacrifice she'd made for a man who didn't value them. Her phone buzzed, breaking her introspection. It was Laura, Eleanor's closest confidant since college and the lawyer she had called the day Richard left. "Everything's set," Laura said firmly. "We'll meet tomorrow morning to finalize the details. You're stronger than this, Eleanor. Richard underestimated you, but soon he'll see his mistake." Eleanor nodded quietly, gratitude swelling in her chest. Laura had witnessed Richard's growing disregard for years, discreetly urging Eleanor to prepare herself legally and financially. Yet, Eleanor had always hesitated, hoping Richard would change. That evening, Eleanor couldn't resist driving past the stylish new condominium complex downtown where Richard had relocated. Through a brightly lit window, she caught a glimpse of him, relaxed and carefree, sipping wine with a younger, glamorous woman she recognized from social gatherings. Amanda, barely older than their own daughter. Eleanor's heart twisted painfully, yet her resolve only hardened. Richard's callousness would cost him more dearly than he could imagine. Returning home, Eleanor opened her desk drawer, removing a thick envelope labeled simply "Documents." Her hands, once trembling, were now steady as she leafed through the carefully compiled papers, financial statements, property deeds, and photographs documenting Richard's recent indiscretions. A small, satisfied smile formed on her lips. Richard's laughter echoed bitterly in her mind, fueling her determination to regain control over her life and perhaps even find happiness again on her own terms. Early morning sunlight streamed through the windows of Laura's downtown office as Eleanor reviewed the final details of their plan. Eleanor had meticulously collected evidence of Richard's financial manipulations and infidelities, ensuring a solid case. Laura laid out documents across the polished mahogany desk, her expression a mix of empathy and determination. "You're doing the right thing," Laura reassured, gently squeezing Eleanor's hand. "Richard made his choices. Now it's your turn." After leaving the meeting, Eleanor stopped by her favorite cafe, somewhere she'd rarely visited without Richard. She ordered coffee and sat alone, absorbing the vibrant chatter around her, noticing how different the world seemed without Richard dictating every moment. For the first time in years, Eleanor felt a flicker of genuine freedom. Just then, Margaret, an acquaintance from Eleanor's gardening club, approached her table with a warm smile. Margaret was an elegantly poised widow who radiated confidence and grace, traits Eleanor deeply admired. "Eleanor, how lovely to see you," Margaret greeted warmly, pulling up a chair. Their casual chat soon turned serious, and Margaret's expression softened in understanding as Eleanor briefly shared her situation. "I've been there," Margaret confided gently, her eyes filled with knowing kindness. "You think it's an ending, but trust me, dear, it's a new beginning. Let me help you through this." Margaret's sincerity and confidence were contagious, strengthening Eleanor's resolve even further. When Eleanor returned home that day, she stood taller, a newfound purpose guiding her every step. She looked around her familiar home, once shadowed by Richard's dominating presence, now promising opportunities and a chance to rebuild her life. Her phone buzzed again, a text from Laura. "All filed. Richard will receive the notice by tomorrow morning." Eleanor felt a mixture of anxiety and satisfaction. It was the first step towards justice, and this time she was in control. Richard's hands trembled slightly as he read through the legal notice again, disbelief quickly morphing into anger. Amanda lounged nearby, barely glancing up from her phone as he paced nervously across their chic apartment. "She can't do this," Richard muttered bitterly. "After everything I've provided, Eleanor dares challenge me?" Amanda sighed and looked up, her eyes showing a hint of irritation masked behind a sweet facade. "Well, Richard, I warned you this might happen. Perhaps she's not as naive as you thought." Richard stopped pacing, eyeing Amanda suspiciously, as a fleeting doubt crossed his mind. "Did you know something about this?" Amanda laughed dismissively, standing and gently touching his arm. "Don't be absurd. Eleanor simply isn't as foolish as you painted her. You underestimated her, and now you're paying the price." Meanwhile, Eleanor found herself increasingly drawn into Margaret's vibrant social circle. Margaret encouraged Eleanor to join local clubs, attend workshops, and even persuaded her to update her wardrobe, gently pushing her beyond the comfort zone that had defined her life for decades. Each step forward felt both intimidating and exhilarating. One afternoon, after a particularly empowering yoga class Margaret insisted upon, Eleanor sat with her friend at a sunny cafe, feeling invigorated and hopeful. "You know," Margaret said thoughtfully, sipping her tea, "I noticed Amanda at a charity event last year, long before she and Richard became public. She seemed very interested in your husband, but I always sensed she had other motivations." Eleanor leaned forward, intrigued. "What kind of motivations?" Margaret hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Let's just say Amanda is known for getting what she wants, and Richard might merely be a stepping stone." Eleanor considered Margaret's words, her mind spinning with possibilities. She realized her battle with Richard wasn't solely about justice. It was also about unveiling the truth and reclaiming her dignity. If Amanda had ulterior motives, Richard's betrayal might only be the beginning of his troubles. Richard found himself increasingly distracted and suspicious. Amanda's vague behavior planting seeds of doubt in his mind. One evening, while Amanda was out, he quietly opened her laptop, driven by an uneasy feeling he could no longer suppress. Browsing quickly through her files, Richard's pulse quickened when he discovered hidden communications indicating Amanda had been carefully orchestrating a plan far larger than he imagined, one targeting his wealth and reputation. In shock, Richard realized Amanda had secretly documented their relationship from the start, meticulously preparing evidence that painted him in an even worse light than Eleanor's own accusations. He slumped into a chair, overwhelmed by betrayal, fear, and regret. Meanwhile, Eleanor flourished under Margaret's continued encouragement. She enrolled in community art classes, discovering a previously unexplored passion for painting. Her artwork gained praise among peers, boosting her self-confidence significantly. Margaret proudly displayed one of Eleanor's paintings in her gallery, attracting interest from local buyers and further validating Eleanor's newfound sense of worth. One evening, at an art exhibition, Eleanor met Robert, a charming gallery owner known for his kindness and appreciation of genuine talent. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, marked by shared interests and gentle humor. For the first time in years, Eleanor felt genuinely admired for who she was rather than what someone expected her to be. Laura called later that evening with news that increased Eleanor's optimism further. Richard's lawyer reached out, she said, her voice triumphant. They're nervous, Eleanor. He's ready to negotiate, but on your terms. Eleanor smiled softly, feeling a deep sense of victory. The tables were finally turning, and Richard would soon understand the gravity of his actions. She had reclaimed her strength and was ready to face whatever came next. Panicked and overwhelmed, Richard confronted Amanda, waving printed copies of her secret emails in his hand. Amanda calmly sipped her drink, unfazed by his anger. You've been using me this whole time, planning to ruin me from day one, Richard accused bitterly. Amanda set her glass down slowly, her expression shifting from amused to coldly indifferent. Did you really think someone like me was interested in you for your charm? It's always been about the money, Richard, and you've made it easier than I expected. Richard felt his stomach churn. The realization of his mistake was crushing. He had sacrificed everything genuine in his life for an illusion. Meanwhile, Eleanor's success flourished further when Robert featured her artwork in a prominent exhibition. As the event opened, locals praised her talent warmly, further lifting her confidence. Robert stood by her side, quietly proud and supportive. Later that night, during a quiet walk along the city riverfront, Robert gently reached for Eleanor's hand, and she welcomed the comforting touch with a warmth she hadn't felt in years. Back home, Eleanor received a surprising visit from Richard. His appearance startled her. He was visibly distressed, his confidence utterly shattered. Eleanor, he pleaded desperately, you were right about Amanda. She set me up. I don't know what to do. Eleanor regarded him calmly, her heart once so fragile now, strong enough to see clearly. Richard, you chose this path, she said firmly. The consequences belong to you alone. Richard stood silent, realizing that he had truly lost her trust forever. As he left defeated, Eleanor felt a sense of closure she hadn't expected, a closure that fueled her determination to continue thriving on her own terms. Richard's world unraveled rapidly. Amanda executed her final moves with ruthless precision, releasing damaging evidence online that portrayed Richard as unethical, untrustworthy, and deeply corrupt. Overnight, his social standing and professional reputation collapsed entirely, leaving him isolated and humiliated. Desperate, Richard attempted to confront Amanda again, but she had vanished, her job done, leaving him utterly alone in the ruins of his choices. Eleanor watched Richard's downfall from a distance, feeling no joy, only relief. She knew now more than ever that her decision to stand firm was correct. Meanwhile, Robert became a steady presence in her life, their bond growing stronger with each shared moment. His genuine admiration and affection allowed Eleanor to trust again, opening her heart in ways she never anticipated. As Eleanor prepared for the upcoming court proceedings, Margaret and Laura offered unwavering emotional and practical support, solidifying Eleanor's strength and confidence. Her paintings gained increasing recognition, leading to a successful local exhibition that attracted attention beyond their community. Eleanor's transformation was undeniable, evident in her poised demeanor and vibrant spirit. One evening, after another successful gallery event, Eleanor and Robert sat quietly on his patio, overlooking the gently illuminated cityscape. Robert turned towards her, his voice soft and sincere. "Eleanor, seeing you reclaim your life has been incredible. Whatever happens in court, know you've already won." Eleanor squeezed his hand gratefully, feeling fully prepared to face Richard once again, not as a betrayed wife, but as a strong, independent woman ready to close this painful chapter forever. The courtroom was tense, filled with murmured conversations as Eleanor sat calmly beside Laura, her friend and legal advisor. Eleanor wore a dignified expression, composed and resolute. Richard, sitting opposite with his lawyer, appeared noticeably diminished. The confident, arrogant man she had known was now visibly anxious, occasionally glancing nervously in her direction. As Laura presented Eleanor's meticulously gathered evidence detailing Richard's financial misconduct and marital betrayal, the courtroom absorbed each revelation with audible surprise. Photographs, financial records, and emails left little doubt about the extent of Richard's deception. Eleanor maintained her steady composure, though inwardly she felt a profound sense of vindication. Richard's attorney attempted to deflect accusations and question Eleanor's character, but the judge swiftly dismissed these attempts as baseless. Richard's expression grew increasingly desperate as he realized the gravity of his situation. Eventually, the court adjourned briefly, allowing both sides a moment of respite. In the corridor outside, Richard approached Eleanor hesitantly, his demeanor subdued, almost pleading. "Eleanor," he began, his voice low and shaky, "can we discuss this privately? Surely there's another way to handle things, something fairer." Eleanor regarded him with quiet dignity, her voice steady and clear. "Richard, fairness left our marriage the day you decided to betray and humiliate me. Now, all I seek is justice. Perhaps you finally understand how it feels to lose everything you took for granted." Stunned into silence, Richard stepped back, realizing his pleas were futile. Eleanor returned confidently to the courtroom, strengthened by her resilience and the support of those around her. After a tense wait, the judge returned to announce the decision. Eleanor was awarded a substantial financial settlement and full ownership of their marital home, recognizing Richard's deception and misconduct. Leaving the courthouse, Eleanor felt both relieved and empowered. That evening, she celebrated quietly with Robert, Margaret, and Laura, toasting not merely her legal victory, but her reclaimed life and newfound happiness. Eleanor smiled genuinely, surrounded by people who respected and cared deeply for her. Later, alone with Robert, Eleanor expressed gratitude for his unwavering support. Robert gently took her hand, gazing warmly into her eyes. "Eleanor, I've watched you become the incredible woman standing before me today. I'm honored to share in your journey, and I hope to remain by your side wherever life takes us next." Her heart filled with hope, Eleanor leaned into his embrace, fully aware that her true victory was rediscovering herself and learning that love and respect were within her reach once more. In the aftermath of the court decision, Richard desperately tried to salvage any remnants of his former life. Humiliated and financially broken, he sought employment, but his tarnished reputation closed nearly every door. His old acquaintances avoided him, and once influential friends refused his calls, leaving Richard isolated and embittered. Eventually, forced to downsize dramatically, he settled into a modest apartment, deeply aware of his lost dignity and the permanent scars of his arrogance. Meanwhile, Amanda, having accomplished her ruthless objectives, relocated to another city, effortlessly leaving behind the chaos she had orchestrated. She quickly integrated herself into a new elite social circle, already eyeing her next target, unburdened by guilt or remorse. Eleanor's life blossomed beautifully in contrast. Her paintings continued to garner significant attention, drawing visitors and buyers to local galleries. Her artwork began to receive regional acclaim, with invitations to exhibit her pieces in nearby cities, further validating her talent and hard-earned independence. Eleanor's story, quietly shared through her art, resonated deeply, empowering other women who had faced similar adversities. Robert, steadfast and nurturing, continued to stand by Eleanor, encouraging her aspirations while respecting her space and emotional needs. Their relationship evolved naturally, filled with mutual respect, warmth, and deep understanding. One tranquil evening, Robert took Eleanor to a secluded spot by the coast, overlooking the gentle waves illuminated by the fading sunset. Taking a deep breath, Robert spoke softly, his voice rich with sincerity. "Eleanor, you've completely inspired me with your courage and grace. I've never felt this way about anyone. Would you consider sharing the rest of your journey with me?" Eleanor felt warmth radiate through her heart, a profound joy she hadn't expected ever to experience again. Smiling warmly, she gently squeezed his hand. "Robert, meeting you has been one of the greatest gifts in my life. Yes, I would love nothing more than to share this journey with you." Their embrace was quiet, meaningful, and deeply affirming. Eleanor's transformation was now complete, her spirit fully healed and stronger than ever. Her heart and future were open wide to the possibilities ahead, free from the shadows of her past. A year had passed since Eleanor's legal victory, and life had never been brighter. Richard, once powerful and influential, had fully retreated into obscurity, his earlier actions having irreparably damaged any possibility of regaining his former life. Now working quietly as an administrative clerk in a distant town, Richard had found humility the hard way, his former arrogance replaced by deep regret and solitude. Amanda's story had taken a predictable yet ironic twist. Her relentless pursuit of wealth and power had eventually exposed her to similar-minded predators. Betrayed by someone even more ruthless than herself, Amanda ended up entangled in legal troubles, isolated by the very social circles she'd once effortlessly manipulated. Her past finally caught up with her, leaving her reputation irreversibly tarnished. Eleanor's journey, in stark contrast, blossomed beautifully. Her art gained significant regional acclaim, culminating in an invitation to showcase her work at a prestigious national gallery in the capital city. The night of the grand exhibition, friends, family, and admirers filled the elegant venue, celebrating Eleanor's talent and resilience. As Eleanor stood proudly next to her most acclaimed painting, a vivid piece symbolizing renewal and strength, she reflected deeply on how far she had come. Amid the celebration, Robert gently took Eleanor's hand and led her away from the crowd to a quiet balcony overlooking the shimmering city lights. He turned to her, his eyes filled with deep affection and sincerity. "Eleanor, I've seen you flourish into an extraordinary woman whose strength and grace inspire everyone around you," Robert began softly. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a small, beautifully wrapped box. Eleanor felt her heart leap as Robert opened the box, revealing an elegant diamond ring sparkling gently under the moonlight. "I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me and let me share in your remarkable journey for the rest of our lives?" Overwhelmed with happiness, Eleanor nodded, joyful tears glistening in her eyes. Yes, Robert, absolutely. Their embrace was tender, filled with warmth, hope, and endless possibilities. Eleanor had turned her greatest pain into her greatest triumph, embracing a future filled with love, creativity, and independence. Her story wasn't merely one of survival, it was a powerful testament to the transformative power of resilience, courage, and true friendship.